Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Tonight, I am joined by my partner, James Fox. How are you, James?
Hey, man, what's going on?
Not a whole lot, It's been a pretty interesting week, seeing everybody's breakdowns on the Garrett Crochet trade. That's pretty much about it. I mean, other than that, what else is going on?
I know if we do two shows, something happened, right? Like usually it's kind of the way that it goes. Yeah, it was pretty eventful winter meetings for the White Sox. I will say we were just talking off air. Like I'm a little bit surprised that like baseball slowed down a little bit, right? Like there's still some big names that I think the outfield market has to kind of get going here. And I think Corbin Burns, I think, is in a situation where I think he's choosing between two not great options in San Francisco and Toronto, where it's like, oh boy, like what do I do? And he's from, I think, the Bay Area, so it's probably San Francisco. But I mean, when you're a Boris client, like if Toronto's the highest offer, you know what I mean? Like what do you do? You know, and I don't know that that's true, but it just kind of seems like Yankees out, Red Sox out, Baltimore not going to go to that level. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, just the hot stove in general. That sort of thing. So, but yeah, other than that, I mean, there's some stuff I think we probably skipped over with our two shows last week that we can get into a little bit here, talk about the system a little bit as a whole. And then Chris Clegg's going to join us about halfway through.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun conversation. Looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah, he's awesome. It's a lot of good work. He just, he did his White Sox list. And then the White Sox added 4 more players.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun looking at these top lists now. I'm having fun with that.
We talked Rule 5 briefly. Did you see like the video and the interview you did, right, of Shane Smith like talking, and then they showed him there was like a bunch of highlights of him? I didn't know he was such a large human.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
He looks like Lance. He looks like Lance Lynn. I was like,
I mean, let's be polite here. I wouldn't say he's quite to that
level.
Not
yet. Like St. Louis Lance Lynn.
Not yet.
St. Louis Lance Lynn.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's see what we got here. We got so we got a question from John here.
I don't
Montgomery
think so.
starting Double-A. Yeah, and his second comment is or high A, and I
think Winston probably. Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, I think Winston makes a lot of sense. And look, he could come quick, man. Like I think we've seen a lot of like, I don't know, like he's not that raw. I mean, it's a lot of strikeouts, so there's like stuff to fix. But I mean, he's a college bat. There was like I saw some stuff from Mike Shirley, and I reached out to some area scouts like since we've recorded last time, and he was legit in their mix. I think they, he wasn't their top guy, obviously, like after the injury, but had he not gotten hurt, they might have taken him at 5, especially if it was going to come under slot potentially. So, they just landed him where they did. There were other teams with rumored interest, and he fell to 12, and I don't know how much of that was because of the injury or just the draft is weird and it happened, but, it's just another pretty high impact guy they got, and it's like the number 2 piece in the deal.
Yeah, I felt absolutely terrible for him watching the College World Series playoffs and watching that unfold, and it was, I felt pretty bad for him, and I wasn't sure if it was going to affect his draft stock a whole lot, but unfortunately it seems to have done that, but it doesn't end up mattering in the end anyway, because, he gets traded before he even steps on the field. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was like, I was like writing a piece about the trade that's up on the website, and I'm like trying to pull him up on Fangraphs, and I'm like, why is there nothing here? And I'm like, oh yeah, because he's got no stats, like because he hasn't played. It's all college stats. So
yep. Yeah, and actually, we saw Cam Smith get moved by the Cubs for Kyle Tucker this week. So that's another guy that just got drafted this year that's gotten traded. I mean, we don't normally see that all that often, and we've already seen it at least twice this year. I think that's the only 2 times it's happened. But
yeah, I think it happens frequently with like guys that was like a 4th rounder last year or something. You know what I mean? Like, but like a throw into a deal, like a third piece in a deal, like a team liked a guy that they weren't able to take. But yeah, with first rounders, it like does not happen this often. And it's almost like part of the reason, like it could really push the trade over the top, right? I think Teal is very safe to be like pretty good, I think, because catchers stink. We talked about this like in our bonus episode. But I mean, if like Braden Montgomery could go to high A and be great and go to double A, and all of a sudden you're talking about another top 20 prospect in baseball. Like it could really, really make that, you know what I mean? Like there's a chance that 6 months from now, Braden Montgomery would have been like untouchable. He would have been up with Christian Robinson and some of those other guys, and you got him now, which I think is good. I like kind of targeting, and he was already on the top 100, but that's why I like targeting international guys with helium, like as third and fourth pieces in deals, like guys that you project are going to be on a top 100 list at some point. And, he's a little bit different than that, but, I do think there's like a lot of surplus value with him.
Yeah, I mean,
not as great of an athlete as Mookie. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, well,
I don't know if he's bowling 300 and being a scratch golfer and all the other crazy stuff that Mookie does. Apparently.
Yeah, I've not seen any highlights of that, but I wouldn't put it past them. There are a lot of questions in here.
There's some good ones too. We can go all the way back up there to Scott W. Do you see that one about the Sox farm?
I did. Yes, yeah. I saw that one. That was one of the ones.
So, me and Ian kind of kicked this around a little bit, but not extensively, right? Like I didn't write down the other teams. I mean, I think some people had them right around like in the 10 to 12 range, and you've added 2 top 50 prospects. And there's some other teams that might fall a little bit, like looking at the Cubs specifically, like, if they trade another prospect for Jesus Luzardo or something, and trade, I mean, I do think the Sox will be a top 10 system. I don't know that they're top 5 without kind of going through and looking at all of them.
I think I read Eric Longenhagen from Fangraphs. I read his article on the trade, and I think that he said that he had him as like 4th or something like that before the trade.
Yeah, so I mean, Eric Longenhagen's one of the guys too, I think, that has Iriarte and Taylor in the top 100. So, he might have 8 White Sox players in his top 100. And that's something we're going to talk to Chris about, like, after those top 6, who's next? Because I do think there's not a consensus. And if we saw Iriarte on a 100, I wouldn't be surprised. If we saw Taylor on a 100, like I wouldn't be surprised. You know what I mean? So I think it's just kind of, there's extra. Baseball America still has Drew Thorpe on theirs. So
I was going to bring
that up. It's a little bit interesting. Yeah.
So on the Baseball America top 100, they have 7 White Sox in the top 100, including the 2 Boston guys that just got moved over. You got Noah Schultz at 9, Kyle Teal at 25, Colson at 38, Hagen Smith at 49, Braden Montgomery at 59, Drew Thorpe at 67, and then Edgar Caro at 78.
Yeah, see, I think Hagen's too low for them. So they both, and I think it's interesting, both publications have Teal at 25.
Yeah, for the top.
And, like, you look at Kyle Teal's numbers, right? And it's not like like where you're like, oh man, I just think he has like a lot of average tools. But like when you're a catcher, like that's why, you know what I mean? Like he's a left-handed hitting catcher with on-base ability and maybe 20 homers. I mean, that's like a top, third of the league catcher.
Yeah. He's like the one that I have like the most reservations about what I expect from him, because it's like you said, the power is not really a standout tool. He does impact the baseball, but we're not looking at a 30 home run guy like we would think that Caro could possibly be. But then again, it's said that he's better than Caro is. I think he's like the 4th and Caro's the 9th or something like that, defensive metric wise.
Yeah. And I'm just, I'm very curious about Walker McKinven with both of these guys and how much of an impact he can make, So something else I thought about, and I didn't like run this past you at all. Do you think there's any chance that there's like a Caro for someone else prospect for prospect trade at some point? Like at a position of greater need.
I have had that thought. Now that you've got Teal and Caro, is that somebody that maybe the White Sox think about dangling? And I mean, I would prefer not, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, can you get Owen Casey for Edgar Caro? I don't know. So just like one of these other teams, like expendable guys. I don't think so. I think they'll both come to spring training, and I think they'll both start in Charlotte, and then they'll kind of just use the DH spot or whatever. I will say though, I hate the idea of like using Kyle Teal as a versatile piece. I think all of his value is at catcher. Like I think his offensive value is above average. Like at catcher, I don't know that it is anywhere else. So I just think he needs to play there.
Yeah, James brings up a thing here. He says, don't you see either Teal or Caro on the opening day roster? I don't see them both being in AAA together. And I had actually had this thought as well, as like, you want these guys to get the majority of the reps wherever they are. So to me, this also doesn't make sense that you've got two guys that are in AAA. Teal was playing for the White Sox, and then Caro was with Charlotte to end the year. I don't see them bumping either guy back because Caro did his via merit, and Teal's obviously ranked very high. So what do you do there?
I think they each get 3 starts a week in Charlotte, or they get 4 one week, and when the other gets 2, and the next week they switch, something like that. I just think that's. I mean, I don't know. Like how many days are starting minor league catchers, like guys that are like the guy, right? Like how many starts a week are those guys typically getting? 4 of the 6 games typically?
Yeah, depending on who it is, I would say, 4 to 5.
Okay. But then that guy's still the DH probably on the off day. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, possibly if he's playing 5, maybe not. Right. But if he's playing 4, definitely at least gets one of them,
Okay. Yeah.
So
there are a lot of questions.
I know. And I feel so behind, but we're just going to keep cranking through them. Max asks, who's more likely to get traded, Benny or Luis?
Robert.
Thoughts?
I don't know what to think about Robert, but it's him. I mean, I know, like, it sounds like Getz is still kind of asking for quite a bit, which he should. He said all the right things about, like, we love Louis Robert. Like, he's going to be on the team and, that sort of thing. I don't think they'll trade him for like some substandard package anymore. And I know I've kind of quibbled on this because I don't really know for sure. I just, like, to me, I think you're bringing him into the season unless a couple of these teams miss on outfielders and give you 75% of like what we want. You know what I mean? Like something like the Reds, right? As an example, like they were a team that likes him. Like Cam Collier, another good prospect and a comp A pick. Like, is that enough to not gamble, on a resurgent season? Or do you say, now we're going to bring him into the season and hope he's an all-star and then trade him? I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I don't think there's any way they can trade Benintendi.
Yeah, I think the money for Benintendi. I mean, Benintendi at the trade deadline, if he comes out like he did, like he ended 2024, possibly. Yeah. The way he is right now, I would be pretty shocked, really. Yeah,
because then it's only like 2 years at like 40 at that point, which isn't terribly crazy. He was pretty good in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he had like a 130 OPS plus or something like that.
Yeah, he was not bad. So. And I hope we get this version of him where he's not Slappy McSlapperson, and he's, I would much rather he K more and hit for more power, which he did. Like, I think he hit 14 homers or something. That's pretty good for him.
Yeah, in the second half of the season, he hit like 9 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so Doug asks, this is a question we were just talking about, did they use the rest of the international bonus?
They did not. So David Keller on 670 a couple weeks ago kind of answered the question as far as, like, he said there will be a plan. So I took that as, okay, they're going to sign a couple of guys or they'll just trade it, which I like, full disclosure, like, I'm good with them trading it. I don't think there's some random Dominican teenager for them to sign. But the problem is doing nothing with it makes no sense, because even if they were to come on record and say, "Oh, we used that 740,000 to pay for new high-tech equipment," or something, right? Like we budgeted it elsewhere. You could do that and still trade the money, because it's fake money that you're trading. You give somebody else the right to spend $740,000 of their money on international teenagers. And instead, you just gave up that right, and you were like, we don't have anybody to sign, and we didn't trade it. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
I would be all for them spending some of that money on that. Have you seen that video wall pitching machine that they have at Driveline?
Oh, yeah, right. And now they have the Driveline assistant hitting coach. So, like, he was a Jason Ochart guy. So maybe that would be
interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let me scroll through here real quick and just make sure that. Let's see.
John asked about Mydroth. I said it right. Chase Mydroth. Yep. And if there'd be any other additions to the infield, I hope not. Like, I would think no, unless they feel like they need a veteran stopgap shortstop to start the year. And then you just kind of let the kids battle out for spots. Because as of right now, like, I think Mydroth's at second. And, they're talking about Colson Montgomery, like, potentially being the opening day shortstop. Look, if it's not Colson, you got Brooks Baldwin and Jacob Amaya. So maybe they sign a vet. I don't know. But my guess would be no.
At this point, I mean, do we want to see a repeat of like a Nicky Lopez again? I mean, he had his utility for sure. But at this point, like, we know the team's not going to be, above a 60-win team, even if they overplay what we think is going to happen.
Yeah. 62 and 100 would be kind of entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, at least they would look like I won't say competent because that's still awful, but at least they would look like a baseball team of sorts.
Does a Paul DeYoung return do anything for you?
No, thanks.
No.
And
because that's what it would. I mean, that's what it would be. It would be like $1 million guy.
Yeah. No, that's and like with what happened with Kevin Pillar, he's not the kind of guy. I honestly think that he's probably done thinking about the White Sox ever again after the way he was treated.
Kevin Pillar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Grimtall says here, is there any harm in letting Luis start 2025 and trade him midseason?
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about this on the previous show. I don't think so, but I think if you're Chris Getz and privately you have reservations about Luis Robert staying healthy or work ethic stuff, and look, I don't know that for sure, right? But and you think like, oh my God, this guy's going to be hurt, and then my owner's not going to let me pick up a $20 million option at the end of the year. Yeah, like I could see him having I mean, no, like to me, bring him into the season, hope that he mashes and trade him at the deadline. But like, I understand like the other side of that is like, take what you can get now, which sucks. But like, I get it.
Yeah. He mentions in another comment, which is something that you have to be afraid of, is if he has another injury and then you're left holding the bag and there's, no way to move him at that point, I wouldn't think.
Right. That's why I think if like what I brought up, like I'm guessing I'm guessing the offers like aren't great at all, right? Because even if like what I brought up was, like the Reds offer or the Red, like if it's a back end 100, another like recent like second round pick that you liked and like a comp pick or something, they might do something like that. Honestly, I mean the best case scenario is obviously you bring him into the season, he's a star for you again in the first half, and you win some games because Luis Robert's awesome. And then the whole first half conversation is like, hey, we're going to trade this guy for a ton at the deadline because bats just aren't really available. Not ones like him anyways.
Oof, I hope not. He said, James asked, do you see Benny as the DH this year?
Well, so I think they are going to rotate the DH. So like, I mean, I guess there's a scenario where like, they could use like against righties, right? Like maybe Luis Roberts in center and you play Tauchman, Fletcher, and Benintendi in the same lineup. And then, I think you'd rather have one of the other two guys in the corner instead of Benintendi. Yeah, I could see that occasionally, but no, I don't think he's like the full-time DH against righties or anything.
Yeah. Another question here from blank name. Is Montgomery good to come to spring training, or is he still rehabbing? I'm going to assume that he's asking about...
Yeah, Braden. So apparently I listened to Connor McKnight, who said that the expectation is that he's full go for spring training. So he'll be on the minor league side. But
that's what I wanted to clarify. Is I also think he's going to be minor league side of spring training on the backfields.
He won't even get an invite. I mean, like you might get to meet him at Sox Fest or something, but I don't think he'll be in big league camp unless it's like one of those late games and there's like, who's this number 86 guy that's like playing right field or whatever. Like,
yeah, you'll definitely. I'm almost 100% certain we'll see him then.
Yeah,
100%. He'll be one of those guys that I'm sitting there scrambling trying to figure out who he is because his number is like 99-1, and I don't have that on my roster. So
Wolf, that's
well, Wolf, thank you so much. Thanks for a super chat. We appreciate that. Who's the first Sox prospect to get a Jackson Chourio type deal? Seems to be the mid-market model these days. Maybe too soon to say.
I mean, go ahead if you have an answer. But
I mean, I don't have a definite answer, but I mean, we're looking. I mean, we've seen what has happened with the White Sox with those early type deals. So, is that something that the White Sox are going to dabble in again? I don't think that they'd necessarily be afraid about it, but at the same time, I mean, we've seen that before.
I mean, Jackson Chourio is really good. I hope they get a player that's as good as him that they can sign to a deal like that. I mean, I think like looking at Colson Montgomery being a little bit older, I think he's going to be 23, even though he was a high school pick. If they play service time games, he'll be around 30. If Colson Montgomery's good, I could see that being like a, one of those extensions for sure.
Yeah, possibly.
It will not be Noah Schultz. I know that much.
No. So TJ asks if the Red Sox offered something like Arias, Blyce, and Romero and Zanatello for Robert, would that be worth considering? Absolutely. I just don't think that they're going to offer Frankeli Arias for out there on a package like that for somebody that you still don't know after watching him last season and watching him mentally check out is, you don't know what he's going to put up at this point. I know.
And, I want to see him with Fuller and these new hitting guys and see if it changes at all. I mean, he was so good in 23. If he's that guy, like they're going to get quite a bit. And I could honestly, like, you don't want to live through the marketing department and Jerry and all that stuff, but like, it wouldn't hurt having Luis Robert on the team to start the year. So there's like somebody to go see. I mean, my goodness, like it's, like the people from Palatine are going to take the bus down to see Mike Tauchman, and I think that signing's fine. And I think that signing's fine. That's one we haven't talked about.
Yeah, I'll bring that up here in a second. I just wanted to get through this stuff. And this is interesting from Dave here. He says the Phillies really need a center fielder. Aiden Miller for Robert straight up.
Ooh.
Again, I don't know if that's going to be something. I don't know if they're going to offer that kind of value for Robert at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
that's my only problem. Now, is Dombrowski crazy enough to do something like that? Yes, absolutely. That guy loves trading for,
he likes stars too.
He does. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he kind of.
I'd love to know like what the real interest in Robert is. And look, I think he's kind of a guy where like if all of a sudden Robert was traded in February, like I wouldn't be that stunned. I think there's a lot of outfield dominoes to fall still. Like we have no idea what the Yankees are doing. Santander's not signed. Nobody plays center field. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot that still kind of has to happen here.
Yeah. It's at this point, like I'm kind of just, I don't know if they're going to get the kind of offers to consider actually moving Robert.
Yeah, I don't either.
At this point.
I don't either.
That's
and
the unfortunate
when Chris Getz is talking about how 6 teams are interested in Luis Robert and the talks have been pretty, I just think he's lying, basically. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's teams that are interested, but nobody's going to pay retail for him. And there's really no, like, Chris Getz can't dump him. So, I think my guess is he'll be on the team to start.
We've got a request for a Roki Sasaki update.
I got nothing. I mean, the White Sox are going to do a presentation or whatever, but I think people kind of don't realize, like, they did a presentation for Ohtani too, and for Masahiro Tanaka. And they were actually seriously bid on Masahiro Tanaka. Like, that might have been he would have been their first $100 million signing. I don't know. I don't know that Roki Sasaki's coming to the Midwest, and he's definitely not coming to the worst team in the Midwest. So, they're doing their job from that end. They can't exactly say, like, oh, he's not coming here, so we're not even going to pitch him. Like, they need to try. But yeah, he'll be signed somewhere on January 15th, and we'll probably hear about it before that, obviously. Like, wherever it ends up being.
The White Sox will just
it would be wonderful because he just goes goes right into your rotation, and he's your number one starter.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. So I wanted to move right quick because we kind of have mentioned it, but we haven't brought it up here on stream so much. I just wanted to take a look real quick at the MLB Pipeline Top 30 now, because they have actually updated it in real time. So I figured I just go ahead and bring it up and see what the deal is.
I don't think they've moved anyone else, though. You know what I mean? Like, they put the new guys on and then slotted everybody accordingly. They didn't go like, hey, this guy in the 20s was awesome in winter ball, move him up to 12, something like that. So
yeah,
they just took the last 4 guys off, added these 4 guys where they thought they would go, and then it kind of went in accordingly.
Yeah. So we had this conversation off stream. The number 7 prospect, you have some interest in whether or not Jairo Iriarte or Grant Taylor is at number 7. The only thing is that Jairo's has made it to Major League Baseball, and he did throw a couple of innings anyway. Yep. So
yeah, I get both. Total. I mean, you think it's Jairo Iriarte, like, I'm totally fine with that. I would just go Grant Taylor because I think the ceiling's higher. I think Jairo Iriarte is more likely to be a big leaguer, obviously, because he already is. You know what I mean? And there's I always kind of look at proximity to majors, but I also look at ceiling. And I don't know that it's a stretch. It might be a stretch to say that Grant Taylor could be an ace, but I think he could be a number 2. And if he stays healthy, it could be quick. So, I think Grant Taylor is going to be on top 100 list this year if he pitches.
Yeah.
Because he's disgusting. And we're going to be talking about him a lot. And Jairo, I don't know what Jairo Iriarte is. If he's your 8th inning guy on your next good team, okay, that's fine. But, there's a lot of reliever risk.
All right. So let me go ahead and scroll down here. There's 11 through 20. Chase Mydroth and Wickelman Gonzalez are there at 13 and 14, mashed in between Bonnemer and Jacob Gonzalez. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'd have Bonnemer higher. I'd probably have Bonnemer in the top 10 and move the pitchers down. But, I mean, that's quibbling. I mean, Baseball America did the same. And I will say, Baseball America, Bill Mitchell, saw Bonnemer, in instructs where I'm not sure Pipeline did. So it's just, I don't know. But it's minor.
Yeah. To answer this question here from Jack says, what happened with Taylor in the fall league?
Well, Ian, can you explain the fall league?
It's basically everywhere, every single PCL league team, Charlotte with the park factors. Basically, if a ball gets hit with any force up in the air, it's gone. So that certainly didn't help. Also, the only thing he did, he pitched in the what do they call that again? It's not the tricky league. What was it?
The Bridge League.
The Bridge League. Yes. I mean, he threw a little bit in the Bridge League, but they were protecting his arm, and he's going from A-ball guys that he's throwing to basically minor league journeymen that, some of them have some power.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I wouldn't put any negative results on it. To me, it's just that he got out there and he was pitching, and the stuff was still nasty.
Yeah,
just needs to work on consistency.
There were some walks and he gave up some bombs. I mean, it's like playing on the moon. Like, it's just nuts. Like, that's why teams don't even bother sending their pitchers that were their top guys generally.
Yeah. Yeah, Vince. I know.
Yeah, it's not good. Just pretend like your first rounder was Kyle Teal.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm going to do here is we have a guest here. So I'm going to go ahead and get him all sorted out. Give me 1 second here. All right. So from the Dynasty Dugout, we are welcoming in our guest for the evening, Mr. Chris Clegg. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much, Ian and James, for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you both.
Absolutely. So obviously there was a pretty big move last week made. Garrett Crochet going to the Red Sox for 4 players. You want to go ahead and give us a little bit of a breakdown of how you feel about the trade and about the guys that moved over?
Yeah, so it's a fun trade. Of course, I think we all knew that Crochet was going to be moved this offseason. It was just a matter of where and who would give the best package in return for Crochet. And, I've heard mixed reviews on this return, but I think the White Sox did exceptionally well. I see the deal as a win-win for both parties. I mean, if we're honest, the White Sox had little leverage with the trade given Crochet and his agent and what happened last year towards the trade deadline. We knew he was going to be moved. And obviously, I think the return was pretty strong. It's been a while since we've seen a trade where we had 2 prospects of that caliber that have been moved. And, people value Teal differently. People value Braden Montgomery differently, especially given the fact that we haven't seen Montgomery put a pro uniform on yet. But looking at this return, I think that the White Sox did exceptionally well, given what they got back. I mean, if you want to talk about like the most ready player, Chase Mydroth is it, and he's ready to step in and I think be the opening day second baseman for this White Sox team. He's as polished of a prospect as you'll find. And then you got a ton of upside to dream on with a Braden Montgomery. And you have Kyle Teal, who he's pretty developed for a catcher. And, I think he's very close to MLB ready. So looking at these pieces, Teal, I think he quietly put together a really good season in 2024, hit 288 across 2 levels, AA and AAA, 386 OBP. So he's strong on base type, 13 homers, plenty of doubles. Unfortunately, I only got like 2 weeks of Kyle Teal I live in Greenville, South Carolina, so I've got the Red Sox high here, and Teal moved so quick, but he was exceptional in the 2 weeks I saw him. I mean, he's a great mover behind the plate. He's a special athlete too for a catcher that we don't often see. He runs well, moves well behind the plate. I got some really good pop times on him. He gets balls. He's a great blocker. Throws. The interesting thing to me is like the caught stealing rate wasn't all that great this year, only 20%. But like I think that he will be better than that. What I've seen, like he certainly passes the eye test, and the bat will play. I mean, it's a good contact profile. I mean, he was 80% contact rate in the zone, 75% overall this year. I think the power is like a 15 home run type. It's not like huge power, but when you're getting everything else, like Teal absolutely plays. So, obviously love that. Like, you could call Teal the headliner, I guess, per se. And while it's not a flashy headliner, Braden Montgomery could steal that title pretty quickly in the 2025 season, just given the kind of bat that he is. And, it's interesting. I think I heard some people say, did the Red Sox already like give up on him? No, I think the Red Sox had to move one of those additional of their top 5 prospects. And so they didn't have a choice but to move Braden Montgomery. One, they're pretty stacked in the outfield. And Montgomery was several years away from finding the playing time, just given that outfield situation right now in Boston. But Montgomery at A&M, I mean, he was phenomenal. I only saw him a couple times in person when A&M played at South Carolina this year, but he's a special athlete, big time power. I mean, he had some of the highest EVs in college baseball. He actually had the highest average exit velocity in college baseball last year at 98.7 miles an hour. He ran a ninth percentile EV of 111 miles an hour. I mean, just all kinds of power. People have questioned the contact skills, but I think it'll play. He was 75% overall, 85% in zone last year at A&M. Obviously, it's an adjustment to pro ball. Like, how well does he pick up spin? And that'll be a question that we'll have to see answered. But he faced pretty good competition. He held his own. You know, he takes walks. He doesn't chase all that often. Also, he's got a huge arm. Like, he's been recorded like up to 98, 99 miles an hour from the outfield. So he's got tools for days. It's just, can he step into pro ball and do what he did in college? Can he overcome the broken ankle that he had down the stretch and the super regionals, if I'm not mistaken? I look at Braden Montgomery and think that there's massive upside here, and it's a lot of fun to dream on. So I think this is one you have to be super excited about. And it's interesting too, because like, I've also gotten the questions of like, well, look back to like the Chris Sale trade and like, look at the bust rate of some of those guys. Obviously, like it didn't work out how you hoped. Like, will these guys not make the majors? And I mean, Teal's almost there. Like, Teal's developed and ready. Montgomery, his tools have him pretty much ready, you know, in a year, I would say. Like, I think Montgomery's the kind of profile you just get out of the way of and let him do his thing. Like, he's going to be a stud, in my opinion, and it would be hard for him not to make the majors given his power and his ability in the field with his big arm. Mydroth, I mean, he's already like on the cusp. I think in any other org last year might have gotten the call, and I think he could break camp with the White Sox next year, just given that, I mean, the bat is as polished as you'll find in the minors. And I've actually had Red Sox pitchers tell me, like, if there's any glove that they want in the infield behind him, it's actually Chase Mydroth. I don't get Marcelo Meyer from pitchers. I get Chase Mydroth, which is interesting. He played third, played second. He played short some this year, so he's versatile. Yeah, he's smaller. He's not going to hit for a lot of power, but he's a table-setting guy that the White Sox lineup desperately needs. Like, he's going to get on base. He rarely strikes out. He doesn't chase it all. He's going to take his walks. Like, I think this is a perfect fit in this lineup, even though it's not a flashy profile. And I guess if there's a piece that, you know, is a question if he makes the majors, it's a Wickelman Gonzalez, who has all the upside. I mean, the arsenal's there for him to make the majors in some capacity. You know, is it a reliever? Is it a starter? It's inconsistent right now. I mean, I've seen Wickelman pitch a lot. There's times where he looks fantastic over 5 innings. There's other times where the velocity dips after 2 innings. You get a mixed bag with him quite often, but, you know, this year, fastball sits 94, 96, tops 98. It's a good riding fastball. His curveball's an easy plus offering, very good pitch. I think that pitch is his go-to whiff pitch, gets Chase out of the zone. When he buries it down, it's easily plus or better offering. He has a mid-80s change, mid to upper 80s change. It's late movement and fade. Yeah, I think it's a solid offering, inconsistent at times, and then he throws an upper 80s slider cutter, probably the pitch he needs to refine the most. Strike throwing's the biggest issue. It's fringy starter strike throwing walk rates right now. He walked 13% of batters last year. Worst case, I think it plays in the back of a bullpen. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer right now whether he starts or relieves, but I think that if that's your fourth piece, then you wound up doing pretty good.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Just a couple of things, you know, that I agree with. Like, obviously Teal's the headliner, but I think Braden Montgomery could look like the headliner in short order. I mean, me and Ian talked about earlier. I mean, there's a chance that 6 months from now he might have been one of the untouchable Boston prospects. We just don't know, you know, because he just has not played. And I do think there were some White Sox fans who maybe were hoping for like a better headliner, but I didn't think pieces 3 and 4 would be as good as this. I would, like, you referenced the Chris Sale trade. And that one was obviously the number 1 prospect in baseball at the time, plus Kopech, but the back end of that trade was not that. It was Luis Alexander Basabe and Victor Diaz who basically turned into nothing. I mean, I think they got, like we talked about this last week, I think they got 4 big leaguers, and now it's up to, the top 2 guys to see basically like what the ceiling of the trade is. I guess the question for Wickelman then that I would have is, since he's already on the 40-man, my guess is the Sox will let him start at Double-A. They'll let Brian Bannister get his hands on him. How quickly do they make just the move to relief, though, if it's just, kind of the same thing it's been?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've kind of questioned that too. Like, I've had some scouts internally with the Red Sox tell me that, it's 100% a reliever profile, but others are more in belief that he can start. And, he actually showed some positives down the stretch this year or 2024 at the end of the season. And it was like, okay, like that's the Wickelman Gonzalez that we had hoped to see like all year and we didn't get. I think his final 5 starts were pretty tremendous, actually. 4 of the 5 were scoreless, and he threw 5 innings in 3 of those, 4 in the other 2. And he limited his walks, struck guys out. It's like, okay, this is the kind of profile we want to see. So I think you hope that carries over. Also, again, it wouldn't be shocking I could see them pulling the plug and saying, all right, we feel like this guy has the stuff to pitch in the Major League bullpen this year in 2025. So, like you said, he could start in Double-A. Could he go to AAA relief role for a couple of months and then bump to the majors mid or later in the season in the bullpen? Absolutely. I think that kind of stuff is there. And you mentioned like already given that he's on the 40-man roster, that helps too. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Just a couple of Max in the chat says he wants to see Montgomery pitch like he did at Stanford. I don't think that's going to happen, although I have heard he hits, like 96 off the mound or something like that. So
he was a 2-way prep out of Mississippi, so, it's like crazy.
Do you have any comps for Montgomery?
I'm not the best with player comps. I typically avoid them just given the expectations. So I like to do more of like a peak stat projection. And so I do those like in my write-ups. And for Montgomery, I put like a peak outcome would be something like a 275, 350 OVP with like a 25 to 30 home run type. So that's kind of what you're looking at there. And then you think about his glove and his ability in the outfield, like it's a cannon of an arm. So it's a pretty special profile if all clicks, in my opinion. It's just, does he make enough contact? And so, I don't have a great player comp in mind, but he's kind of just a unique kind of guy that's just can mash.
Yeah, so this is something that's been mentioned with Yoan Moncada, and specifically here in Chicago. Jack asks if you think Montgomery would be better to hit lefty only.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain that he mentioned that he was going to give up switch hitting. So, that was right around draft time that I had heard that. And so I'm curious if that does stick. But that was, I'm pretty certain, something that he had talked about. And so I think that that'd be the case. Like, I saw him hit only left-handed in my looks at him, and it looked really good. So, I think that could be interesting to see, like, does the contact improve, like if he's hitting only lefty? So, I think that could certainly be the case.
I heard an interview with him, and I don't know if it was right after the draft, but it was MLB.com, those guys, where he kind of said, like, he's a natural left, but he has no interest really in facing, like, left sliders. So I think he was, like, kind of kidding, right? So he just would rather turn over and face right and face tough lefties right-handed, but I don't know. Like, we'll see. It's been something that's been talked about for sure. Chris, have you dove in at all? Just like, we haven't really looked at other systems, and I know there hasn't been a ton of trades, like just where this puts the White Sox overall, like ballpark. I mean, some people have had them like the back end of the top 10, but you add 2 top 50 prospects to it, it kind of improves it quite a bit, I would think.
Yeah, and I thought that this could wind up being the top farm system in the game at some point, especially, last deadline if they did move Crochet and Luis Robert, which didn't wind up happening at the time. But, I mean, again, like you look at this system now, and it's pretty stacked. I think now I have 6 in my top 100. I think most other outlets do as well. And it's got depth to it as well. So I think it stacks up pretty closely with, pretty much any org. especially given the upper level talent. And if you're Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith pan out, then I know Colson Montgomery's value is kind of a mixed bag at this point from people. I'm still in on Colson, just given the injury that he dealt with his hand this year and how he let it heal in the AFL. He looked spectacular in my looks again. This AFL, he looked significantly better than the Colson that I had seen the last several years. So I think this system's a ton of fun. I mean, we're going to talk about some other guys, but, I think it's a top 5 system in the game at this point. Obviously, like, there's rumors Luis Robert goes, and if that's the case, it's only going to get better. I know that then you look at the Major League squad and be like, what in the world do we even have to root for at that point? But, the future would look bright, and it does look really bright right now to me. I think it's a fantastic system.
So since you're in Greenville, right near the Greenville Drive, you've obviously seen the Winston-Salem Dash, and this past year they had Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith roll through. What are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, I got to see both this year, which was a blast to watch. I mean, they were fantastic looks. And, Schultz is so unique. Like, game 1 of that series, I think he threw on Saturday, but game 1 of that series, when he walked out of the locker room, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy's just insanely big. Like, he's obviously listed at 6'9". He's every bit of it. He's huge. And the kind of pitcher that he is tremendous, given that he commands the ball so well for his size. Like, you don't expect that frame and profile to really have the command that he does, and that's what really stood out to me. I saw him in Kannapolis in 2023, and then seeing him this year. I mean, there was obvious improvements in the profile with Noah Schultz, and just his year, obviously. Everybody listening knows how good he was. The numbers were fantastic, but to see him throw strikes at an above average clip of 64% will absolutely play. He walked less than 7% of hitters. His fastball set 95, 96 when I saw him. It topped out 98. Ton of arm side run to it. Lands it for strikes often. It's a low effort delivery too, which, given the frame and delivery, it's like, okay, he may sit 96, 97 with time too. And especially given how the White Sox have babied him, like, he's not thrown more than 4 innings. At any point of his career, they've been extremely careful with him. But I think the fastball could continue to tick up. The slider, it's 79 to 83 when I saw him. Really good sweeping action. He was comfortable front and backdooring hitters with it. He sequenced it really well. It was a tremendous pitch, as you all know. The changeup I thought looked pretty good. There was significant progress in that pitch from when I saw him in 2023 to 2024. While it's primary fastball slider, I think that progression of the changeup was huge this year and will be huge in his progression long term. I think as he gets comfortable with it, he'll only throw it more and be a true 3-pitch guy. I think this command's so good there. The biggest question is, when did the White Sox let him go? And I hope that we see it this year. Like, he's got to go beyond 4 innings at some point, and it should be 2025, where they kind of let the reins off a little bit more. He averaged just 3.8 innings per start last year, so that's something you want to see tick up. But the pitcher himself is just a tremendous arm, and I think it's a top 3 pitching prospect in the game. Hagen Smith is interesting as well. Saw him pitch with Arkansas when they came to South Carolina this year, and then saw him again in his start with Winston-Salem when they were down here in Greenville. And it's just a high-octane arm. There's command issues at times. His start I saw with Winston-Salem, I think he's fatigued at that point. It was in September. I think it was like September 9th or 10th. And at that point, I mean, he had pitched a heavy workload at Arkansas, and then back in pro ball pitching again. So I think there was some fatigue involved, and there was the stat line, it wasn't great, but his locations were just off. To me, it was just a bit of fatigue at that point in the year. But Smith's arsenal, I mean, the fastball, 94, 96, it's a unique profile because he throws from a low release height. It's 5'7" release height. It's lower IVB, but it's average for that release height. It's 14, 15 inches, but he gets good horizontal movement on the pitch. It misses bats when he locates it well. That's really been the biggest issue when he has gotten hit, is due to fastball location. But I think that's something that will be cleaned up with time. I think was still adjusting to pro ball. He got hit around some. I'm not particularly worried about that. He throws a slider and a cutter. They kind of morph at times, but the pitch has good depth. It's got a shorter horizontal. It's a highly effective pitch. He throws some that are longer sweepers too, which sit in the lower 80s. The slider cutter is 85 to 87. He throws 2 changeups as well. Traditional changeup around 90 miles an hour, some pretty good carry to it. But he throws a nasty splitter. And he didn't throw either of those in his pro debut, which I kind of think was just a org-related thing where they're like, hey, we're going to just really focus on this for now. Those pitches are tremendous. I love that splitter that he throws. It's a beautiful parachuting pitch that it misses a ton of bats, and there's fantastic stuff here. I think the strike throwing does come along. It's kind of one of those cases where at Arkansas, I mean, he was a workhorse type guy where he was able to miss bats out of the zone. While there were walk issues at times, we did see improvements there. But at the end of the day, like, I think Smith has SP2 upside. And, maybe we see Schultz could be an SP1 with time, but Hagen Smith's right there with him, and they've got a fantastic 1-2 punch here.
So I think, lots of publications, like you said, are going to have 6 guys in the top 100. Edgar Caro had a good year last year. Just, I guess, your thoughts on him, and then also, like, your thoughts on having 2 pretty close to the majors, like, catchers like this as a plan, essentially, like the White Sox are doing, it seems.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I think that we've kind of learned that you can't have too much catching, and maybe this is a case where they want to work both. It's, the Athletics have kind of made that work in the past. There's been teams that have made a 2-catcher system work, and I think it's a case here where it is possible that it could. Everybody kind of assumes that Edgar Caro is going to move off the position, but he's made progress behind the plate. Like, there's no denying that, and his bat is extremely good. The bat got better throughout the season. He made really good contact last year. The overall and in-zone contacts were strong. The power gains were notable in 2024. He adjusts his setup well. Like, he adjusts well in the box, controls the barrel well. You look at the exit velocity data, launch angles, they were all improved in 2024. And so I think that Caro is one of those profiles where you look at it and it's like, okay, like, he can catch and the bat's really good. Maybe it's not like a studly defensive guy. I think Teal's going to obviously be the better defensive guy there. But I don't think you look at Caro and just say, hey, this guy's moving off position. Like, I think that this could be a case where they make both work. Teal's versatility is interesting. Yeah, he's a good enough athlete where, he could play at corner outfield. He could play a second base in a pinch. Like, I think that would be the interesting thing to watch. Like, does he catch and then does he kind of slot elsewhere on his days off if you want to keep his bat in the lineup? Or is it a case where they just kind of work both in? I think we'll kind of see pretty early what that's like. I'm not sure either break camp. I wouldn't rule it out, but I think both probably start in AAA. And we'll kind of see pretty early how they see both of those guys and how they can make both work. I think that'll be interesting to watch. But, I mean, Caro is fantastic. The swing changes that he made in 2024 were legit, and everything kind of backed it up.
So something else that me and Ian were debating, and I think it'll be different kind of everywhere. Who do you have as the 7th ranked prospect in this system? And then who are like maybe the couple guys that are in the mix there, for you think?
For 7th spot in the White Sox, got Brian Ramos there currently. It's an interesting, spot. Like I mentioned, they've got the guy, actually he would bump down to 9 now so 7th now would be Grant Taylor. Apologies. I was just looking at my old article where before I'd put in the other guys. Grant Taylor would be the 7th guy. I've long loved a Grant Taylor. Saw him in the AFL. I only got an inning of him, unfortunately, but I was scheduled to go see him in Kannapolis before he had the lat strain, which was unfortunate in the regular season. But, you look at Grant Taylor and what he brings to the table, and there's a ton to like. I mean, the arsenal is tremendous. Fastball sits at 96, up to 99. It's good rides, good tailing action. He gets over 7 feet of extension, which is just kind of absurd from his kind of frame. But the fastball gets on you quick, and it's a low release, 5'9", 19 inches of IVB. Fastball is plus or better. It's an impressive pitch. I mean, the slider, really good offering as well. It's a harder breaking upper 80s pitch, whiff rates north of 50% this year. Again, a smaller sample, but still, it's absurd stuff. He throws a sweeper, he throws a curveball, throws a cutter in the low 90s. It's a pretty deep arsenal of pitches, and he's throwing strikes for the most part. Now, he looked a little rusty in the AFL, but the stuff was there, and that's a terrible environment to pitch in. It was really just about getting him the work, and he absolutely got what he needed, I think, to head into 2025, hopefully healthy. Health has been his biggest detractor so far in his career. Obviously, we know we had TJ at LSU, didn't pitch in 2023, and then the lat strain in this season pretty early, but Grant Taylor's a fantastic arm and one that I'm super enamored by, just given the uniqueness of the arsenal and his ability to throw strikes. I mean, we saw the command look fantastic early in 2024 before the injury. So I'm super excited to see if he can handle the workload of a full inning or a full starter's workload in 2025.
Did you have any thoughts on the White Sox 2024 draft class at all?
Yeah, I think they did exceptionally well. Like, you look at a couple of the guys, obviously, getting Hagen Smith at the top is huge. I mean, there's several ways they could have gone at 5, but you dream on what Hagen Smith could be, and you squint and you see that number 2 starter, and it's hard not to, just given kind of the rest of the arms in that draft. You look at some of the other guys that they got. I mean, Caleb Bonham is interesting to me. He entered the kind of beginning of 2024, and he was talked about as one of the best prep players. He's a little stiff, which is what I don't like about him. The actions just aren't there. He looks stiff in the box, but the reports I got from Instructs and the Bridge League were pretty tremendous on him. So I'm kind of curious to see him in affiliate ball this year. Should get some looks pretty early on. I like Blake Larson a lot as kind of a guy that there's still plenty to dream on his upside. Say he's kind of a later bloomer as an arm, but the fastball, it's 92, 94. But it really ticked up this spring, and I think there's still a lot of room on that frame. He's 6'2", 180, so you can kind of dream on some more velocity there. His slider already shows spin rates north of 3,000 RPM. It's kind of like Jackson Joe-best spin rates on the slider. It's got good depth and sweeping action to it. Very early development on changeup. So he may be one that takes a little longer to develop. We don't see the returns early, but I think they could be there. I look at that profile and think that, it comes around. Nick McLean is somebody that I think we've yet to see the best of. Obviously, one of the McLean brothers, Matt, is being his brother. And I really like this profile where I think there's still a lot to be had there. So getting him in the 3rd round, I think it's a good pick. Casey Sawkey, I absolutely loved when I saw him with Winston-Salem to end the year. He's just a ball player, and he does a lot well. He was impressive in the outfield to me. He looked strong. He's got a good frame, 6'3", 210. He hit the ball exceptionally well. He's got big pop that's backed by pretty high exit velocities. College was a 92-mile-an-hour average and 108-mile-an-hour 9th percentile. Both those were 95th percentile among all college hitters, not just draftees. He does damage on fastballs. There's questions about contact against breakers with Sawkey, but of the 2024 draftees that I saw down the stretch, Sawkey was honestly one of the more impressive ones where I was like, okay, this guy looks the part and the numbers kind of back it. So for 4th round pick, I love Casey Sawkey. Sam Antonashi is another one that, I'm a big fan of. Coastal Carolina guy, local here. Seen him several times. He's not a flashy profile, but it's just a super feel to hit. It's, his overall contact rates in college were even better in pro ball, which is crazy. He was 90% overall contact in pro ball, 89% in college. Those are upper tier contact rates. That's 70 grade contact if that were to continue. The end zone contact was there. Plate discipline was super. Chasing into sub 15% clip, that's going to play. So it's a fun hit profile and plate discipline. The exit velocities are interesting with him. Like I said, it's not big power, but his 9th percentile in college was 103. It dropped to around 100 with Wood. So it's below average power, but he did hit a ball as hard as 105 with Wood in his pro debut. The barrel rates are good, though. It's a super feel to hit the ball at ideal angles. heavy line drive profile, good ability to lift. Like, he kind of checks a lot of boxes for me, and he's a pretty good runner at that. So, those top 5 rounds, like, I thought that they really knocked out. Obviously, a lot of their money went there in those top 5 rounds, but I think they did super well in that part. Aaron Combs is an interesting one out of Tennessee, a little bit later in the 8th round. Like, kind of be curious to see how he develops as an arm, but he's got a great frame, interesting stuff. So he's kind of when I look at it, it's like, okay, like maybe he's somebody to watch out for. But those top 5 rounds, 6 picks were, I thought, fantastic, and all had really good returns early on, at least those that debuted.
Aaron Combs was disgusting for Kannapolis down the stretch there. Do you got any sleepers that you like in the White Sox system?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys here. Obviously, the system's got deeper and deeper. I'm pretty high on Aldrin Batista at this point. I've got him 13th in the system now after the trade. Actually, 14th. I've had my draw slightly ahead of him. But Batista is a fun arm. I saw him the second week of the season with Kannapolis, and I saw him again down the stretch in September with Winston-Salem. And he's just super impressive. One, his ability to throw innings was tremendous. Like, he's got some of the best east-west movement of any pitcher I saw all year in over 60 games that I sat on. I mean, he's got a lanky frame. He's still got projection on it. He's listed 6'2", 185. He may be a tad taller than that if we're being honest. So there's plenty of room to still add weight and velocity. By the end of the season, he was consistently sitting 93 to 95. He works, like I said, heavy east to west. He registered 18 inches of arm side movement on average, which is wild. Like, the biggest thing with him, like, he really needs a pitch to change a hitter's eye level just to get more depth to it. So I'd be interested to see if he can add another pitch this offseason. But slider's a tough look for hitters, 83 to 85. He threw it to lefties and righties consistently. Heavy sweep, as you could guess with that profile. The changeup, 20 inches of fade on average is just absurd changeup that sits in a similar velo range to the slider. I look at that pitch. I would love to see him throw it more, to be honest with you, because it looked really good both times that I saw him this year. He's a strike thrower. Like, he threw strikes at above average clip. Yeah, swinging strike rate was questionable. I think it's something where if he can develop a pitch that gives him some depth, this could be a pitcher that explodes. And I think there's a lot of upside still to dream on. Obviously, the surface numbers were really good with Batista this year. I'm already quite high on him, and I think he's one that probably is undervalued in general census, but I think he's a really good arm. So he's someone that I'm kind of curious to see. Like, I think he's kind of a major sleeper there, and obviously maybe White Sox people are higher on him, like maybe closer to where I am, but I look at him as somebody that is super interesting. A little deeper, I liked Ryan Galaney a lot in my looks, power hitting first baseman. And while his season was inconsistent at times, like, he hit some mammoth home runs. Like, he looked super strong with the power. He's an interesting kind of profile. He had a fantastic senior year last year at Wofford, in a smaller school, local here. I'd seen him in college play some, but it carried right over to pro ball. And I thought his first full season was pretty solid against an older profile. So it's one of those where, like, okay, like, how much is left developmental wise? He's a unique stance. Like, he's a deep squat in the box. Like, it's a short stride, barely lifts his legs, but he's pretty explosive through the zone. The power is exceptional. I think the contact skills have been pretty respectable when I've seen him, both early in Kannapolis and then throughout the year with Winston-Salem. I think he's a guy that brings some deeper intrigue. So maybe that's the deeper kind of sleeper, but man, Batista's just a guy that I've really loved my looks of.
So then last one here, Chris, before we let you go, thank you so much for joining us. I didn't really put this on your rundown, but I can't not ask you about George Wolko just after kind of what we saw last year. I think we kind of expected what he did in Arizona. Going to Kannapolis was a surprise for me, and I think it was a little bit for Ian too. And everybody saw the K rate, but just some of the stuff that kid did as an 18-year-old, like in Kannapolis after reclassifying, just was pretty impressive to me, and we'll see how it carries over. Where do you have him ranked, and what are your thoughts on Big George?
Yeah, so he would slot in 10th in the system now post-trade. He's someone that I built a relationship with in high school. He was a South Carolina commit. He was going to be coming local to me. So he's a fantastic guy. Obviously, you mentioned, I think that's the biggest thing. He reclassified. He was 17 and a half at the draft in 2023. And you have to think, like, he would not have even, like, when he started into the complex, like, he wouldn't have been drafted yet under normal circumstances. So he was super young. He has monster power. I think there's no denying that. And he's 6'7", 240. He put up a 9th percentile exit velocity of 108 miles an hour this year, which was above or right at a Junior Caminero mark. And Junior Caminero gets marks for being one of the best power hitters in the minors. Obviously, recent graduate prospect status, but that's the kind of power we're looking at. And he was a young 18, which is wild. So the power upside is tremendous. I think that you have to dream on that. And he had 13 home runs in 91 games. Again, I think that it's one of those cases where with time, like, yeah, the home run power is going to develop. He hits a ton of balls in the air. He gets to the pull side exceptionally well. The bat speed is there. And those underlying power metrics were at the top of all minor leaguers, not just minor leaguers that are his age. Then on the flip side, you have the contact. And he struck out north of 40% of the time, which is a big concern. The contact rate, 56% on the year. Like, yeah, that's a major concern too. But I think we saw the progress. Like, if the season had gone on longer, like if he had started in Kannapolis at the beginning of the year, which would have been crazy, obviously, but I'd be curious to see where he would have been at by the end of the year. And I think we'll see some improvements come spring. The contact rates did improve all year, and that was notable. By the end of the year, the final month, he was above 60%. And yeah, that's still a scary mark, but that's improvement. And I think that given his age, given where he was at, being one of the youngest players in the complex at the time and then in single A in Kannapolis, I think that this is one of those things where, yeah, I think that's notable to see contact rates improve by 5-6 percentage points throughout the year. Like, to me, that's huge. Power upside, you dream on. The swing and miss in the zone, definitely going to have to be improved on. But is there a case where he can be and live in the high 20s or around a 30% K rate? Absolutely, because the rest of the tools are there. The power's off the charts. Like, he's a good athlete for his size. Like, obviously, you know, everybody this size gets the Aaron Judge comp. Like, people just throw out those comps because of the size and nothing else. But, you know, Wolkow does move very well, I think, for his size. And, you know, I'd be curious to see how the body shakes out as he continues to develop. But I look at this profile and I think there's a ton of fun to dream on. I think that the true evaluation will happen in the end of 2025. Like, it's just, given that he should have been in high school in 2024, you look at what he did and you're like, okay, like, some of these numbers are eye-popping, and that's phenomenal to see. So I think you dream on the power, you hope the contact comes around, you take the improvements that he made month over month, and you hope for the best. But I think that you look at what he did and you had to be happy with the progress. And I think you have to be excited about him as a White Sox fan.
Agreed. So last thing that we had here is in our rundown here is that somebody that you wouldn't be surprised to see in the top 10 by midseason if that isn't right now.
Yeah, that's it's be interesting because you, like, who do we see graduate from this system? Like, who could really take the jump? I liked Gerald Perez in some looks of him. He'll be kind of an interesting one to watch, I think. Looking kind of down the board a little bit, like, what to make of Samuel Zavala at this point? Like, his year was so bizarre, like, where he improved his contact rates from 2023 to 2024, like, so substantially, but yet the results didn't come. He's a weird one for me that I still struggle to evaluate, but, you know, Samuel Zavala is one that I think could really make a jump. I saw some Riley Gowan starts where I was like, yo, this guy's like, he looked really good in flashes. And then he had his moments where it was like, okay, like, who knows what to make of this guy? Like, you kind of look at some of the younger names. Like, when I think about a guy that can make a jump, like, typically it's some younger guys maybe coming off the complex, and you look at like a Adrian Hill or Abraham Nunez. Those are guys that, showed flashes. So I'm throwing several names out there. Like, I think those would be guys that I would watch. Obviously, I haven't seen the complex guys at all. Riley Gallons was just an arm where I'm like, oh my goodness, like this guy has the moments where you can see it. He just has to put it all together over a full season. Samuel Zavala, again, like he's had his moments too where, he looks great. Other moments, like he doesn't. But he's always been very young. The Padres are aggressive on him. I think his high assignment with the White Sox was aggressive too. But I can't ignore what Zavala improved contact-wise. I mean, I think it was like a 13% in-zone contact improvement in 2024 and like a 11% overall contact jump. And those are huge. He doesn't chase. Like, he's a low chase guy. He's got a little bit of pop. There's some sneaky pop in there. So I think Zavala could have a huge rebound year in 2025 if he's able to put it all together. So those are some guys a little bit deeper, I guess, that, are worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, we've seen video of him making some swing adjustments here in the offseason, as is, the normal thing. And he'll come in the greatest shape of his life to spring training as usual. But interested to see what he can turn in next year. So on the way out here, you want to let the listeners know where they can find you?
Sure. Well, first, thanks both of you for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation. Questions in the chat. Appreciate all the questions there. But you can find me on Twitter X at Chris Clegg, MILB. The DynastyDugout.com is my website. I do fantasy baseball work. I do prospect coverage. Writing up every team's top 30s right now. I'm 23 teams in, so I've done a variety this offseason. So it's just wild and just dug in deep all offseason. But the White Sox are a team that I get to see a ton. Kannapolis being close, and Winston-Salem's not far. In-laws live in Winston-Salem, and they come down to Greenville all the time. So get those looks a lot with White Sox prospects. So I get a lot of video out there. My YouTube has a lot of video of White Sox prospects. If you want to check that out as well, it's just the Dynasty Dugout. So, but again, thank you both for having me. It was a great time, a great conversation.
Thanks for all the information.
This time of year, do you get excited for trades, or is it just constant anxiety?
It's a lot of anxiety because then I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to move all these people on my list. Like, I feel so behind. It's like I'm trying to write up a different org, and I'm like, I got to bump these guys around. So, yeah, it's fun. Like, you like to see like guys moving around, and like, could they benefit from this trade or not? But then it's like, I've got to move all these guys on my list.
That's brutal, especially when doing all the teams. That is awful.
It's fun, though. I love it. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. Thanks for all the information, and we appreciate you very much. Thank you. And we'll catch up soon.
Sounds great.
All right. So this has been the FutureSox podcast. Anything that you find here on YouTube, you can also find in the anywhere you find your podcast. Now, if you were listening in podcast form, you can see us every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app. FutureSox.net, you can find all of our written content, like James' recap of the Garrett Crochet trade that just happened. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out in the chat. Thank you for all the questions. Thanks for hanging out. You guys help us run this thing, and we appreciate you guys so much. Thanks to Chris Clegg for hanging out tonight and bestowing his knowledge upon us. And we will catch up with you guys next week. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. You guys have a great week, and we'll catch up with you guys next week. Thanks.